Hi class, I wanted to provide some feedback regarding your argumentative topic. As you know, I already graded the discussions and I left some feedback there, but I did want to provide some general feedback based on some of the things that I noticed that were reoccurring with a lot of students. So the first thing I want to say is please make sure that you read that feedback and make sure that you watch this video, because it is very important that you select a topic that works for the essay and that it is argumentative. Because if the topic is not argumentative, then you're going to have a hard time completing the essay, and you're also going to have a hard time meeting the requirements and the rubric criteria. So obviously, if you don't meet the rubric criteria, that is going to affect your grade. So you want to make sure that your topic lends itself to an argumentative essay and not an informative essay or a cause and effect essay. So with that in mind, the first thing I wanted to mention was that I noticed a lot of you had really great topics that had a lot of potential, but the argument was not clear. So if I left that feedback and you're wondering, well, what does she mean? Well, sometimes whenever we come up with a topic, we focus on the effects or we focus on the pros and cons, and that's not necessarily an argument. To make an argument means that you select one side or one position and you argue for that position. Now, yes, whenever we write an argumentative essay, we are going to address the opposition, but we only do that in one paragraph, and then we have to refute it with a rebuttal. If you focus on the pros and cons, that means your whole paper is discussing both sides, and that's not the point of an argumentative essay. The point of an argumentative essay is to discuss one side, argue for that side, provide reasons, provide evidence that support that side, and then you address the opposition in that one paragraph, and then you have a rebuttal. So topics that focus on both sides or on the effects of something, that's not argumentative. Like I said, pros and cons, you're discussing both sides. An argumentative essay should not discuss both sides. It should only focus on one. If you're focusing on the effects of something, then that's more of an informative essay. You're not necessarily making an argument, so to speak. So let me give you an example. I'm going to try to think of an example of a topic that people are not writing about. I think marijuana. Marijuana is one of those topics that I don't think anybody in this class is writing about. So if we look at that topic, if you were to say, I'm going to discuss the effects of marijuana, in that essay, you're not really making a claim or you're not making an argument. Instead, you're just informing us about how marijuana affects the body or its effects on the economy or whatever. So that would need to be retweaked. Now, it doesn't mean that the topic doesn't work. It just means that we have to find an argumentative angle. So another example is if you discuss something like, I want to write about how people should not use marijuana and drive. That's an argumentative topic, but it's what we call an obvious argument. Most people are going to agree that you shouldn't drive and smoke marijuana, or you shouldn't smoke marijuana and drive a vehicle. You shouldn't drive under the influence of anything, right? So that type of argument, while it works, it's what we call, like I said, very obvious, right? It's like with topics with child abuse. Nobody's going to argue for child abuse because everybody knows that it's wrong. So when that happens, if your argument is a little too obvious, right? Like if you say drugs are not good for you. Again, yes, some people might disagree with that, but that argument is very, very obvious. So whenever that happens, you want to tweak your argument a little bit so that you can actually make a stronger, more interesting argument out of it. So again, if we're looking at the issue of marijuana, you want to look at what's going on, and you also want to look at a solid argument. So for example, instead of arguing the effects, instead of discussing the pros and cons, instead of making an obvious argument, what you can do is you could say something like, that we should get rid of the dispensaries across New Mexico because they have led to more crime, and then you can provide other reasons. Or you could even argue, like if you're interested in the medicinal marijuana aspect, you could even argue that marijuana should be used to treat, some conditions like cerebral palsy or something like that, right? Or I have a student in another class who is arguing that psychedelics should be prescribed more in the field of psychology. That's an argument because it's something that people would not agree with, and it's something that you actually have research on both sides. If we go back to that topic that I said that was obvious, you're not really going to find a lot of evidence that says, yes, it's good for you to drive under the influence of marijuana. If you think about it, even when you buy medication off the counter, it says, some of it says do not use while operating a vehicle and things like that. So if you want to know if your topic is very obvious, look at the opposition. Is there anybody who has a good argument against it? If there's no good argument against it, then that probably means that your topic is too obvious and nobody would disagree with it. Now, in terms of the pros and cons and discussing the effects, for that you are going to find a lot of research, but like I said, those types of papers would be mostly persuasive. So if I left that comment for you, if I said clarify the argument is not clear, basically what that means is that either your topic that you proposed was not making an argument, or you did not state what your argument was. So keep in mind again that to be an argumentative essay, it has to make a claim. And again, that claim cannot be obvious, like drugs are bad for you or something like that. It has to be something that is debatable and there are good reasons for both sides. And like I said, you also have to be able to find evidence and good reasons. So think about that. If you need any help with your topic, if you're not sure how to clarify the argument or you're not sure how to make an argument about it, you can go ahead and email me and I can go ahead and help you. If you like, we can go ahead and set up a Zoom meeting. So we still have a little bit of time to discuss topics, but like I said, the very, very most important thing that you need to do is make sure you're making an argument. Another thing I noticed was that some of you, whenever you listed your thesis statement, it was really long. Like it was a few sentences, but you didn't state the argument. So keep in mind that a thesis statement should be one sentence and it should state your claim and your reasons. So basically, your claim is something like more psychedelic drugs should be prescribed by psychologists because, and then you can provide your reasons. Typically, you want to have like 2 to 3 reasons in your thesis. Now, keep in mind that the thesis is one sentence and it goes at the end of your introduction. If you need help writing your introduction or your conclusion, please make sure that you refer to the writing tools module because I have a handout there that covers introductions and a handout that covers conclusions. So like I was saying, your thesis should not be multiple sentences long. It should only be one sentence. And yes, every essay needs to have one because, the thesis is basically the central point of the essay. Without it, you don't have a purpose or you don't have a point. So those are the 2 main things that I noticed, but like I said, I did want to go ahead and try to clarify it just because there were several people whose argument was not clear, and that's perfectly okay because that's the whole point of this. That's the whole reason why we brainstorm, because we think of a topic, but then we have to figure out how do I make this into an argument, right? So, it's very important that you think about it. Now, I forgot to mention, if you want to write about the effects of something, you just have to find the argumentative angle. So let's say you want to talk about the effects of technology. Well, okay, you can discuss them, but you have to make a claim. So your claim could be that technology has a negative effect on us. Now, that would actually work because there's a lot of research out there that says that technology has a positive effect on our relationships, on our work, on our knowledge. But then there's also a lot of research that says, no, it has a positive effect. So if you're interested about the effects of something, that could work. You just need to make a claim that those effects are positive or negative. And then that would be your argument. But again, you want to be careful that you don't focus on the effects and you don't actually focus on the argument. So don't just make it informative. Go ahead and remind us that these effects are negative. Also, another way that you can take that a little bit further is if you want to say something like, cell phones are having a negative effect on us, so screen time should be limited. Or social media has become very polarizing, so it should be censored by the government. That right there would be your claim, and then you would need to go ahead and have your reasons. So like I said, if you want to go a little bit further, you can go ahead and say something has a negative effect, so it should be monitored, it should be censored, or, you know, kids should not have tablets before the age of 5, or whatever it may be. So that's also an argument that you can develop if you're really interested about writing about the effects. So I hope this information is a little bit helpful. Like I said, I try to address most of the common feedback that I left. If I said your topic has potential, then that means your topic has potential. It's just a matter of finding the argumentative angle. So like I said before, if you need any help with that, please let me know and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.